Where I'm going to take off is basically where John and Hannah stopped, which is around, now you know what behaviors are needed, right? What do you do next? What happens now? And so what really intrigued me was, because this is an interesting topic, that the topic here is constructing creativity. What a fascinating combination of words. So as Hannah so eloquently put it, creativity is fluff, right? And constructing is as engineering as you can make it. So how do you engineer creativity? Is it even possible, right? That's an interesting question. But even more fundamental than that is a question, what is creativity? Now we've talked about creative behaviors, but what is creativity? And that's a fun conversation to have. So since I'm a troublemaker, that's what it says in my description. I'm not going to follow the rules that I'll do a presentation and then we'll have a conversation. I'm just going to have a conversation. So turn to the people on your table and have a chat about what is creativity, so we can at least figure out what we're talking about. Okay, thank you. Let's just get a few responses back. So that's good, great list. I think it kind of proves the point that creativity means different things to different people, right? So as someone who is trying to work on an organization and trying to make an organization creative, the first question I asked an organization is, let's define what creativity is for you, right? If it's problem solving, it's completely different from saying what if and challenging, from linking and connecting, from saying that it's something new and useful. So the very first thing you need to do is, if you want to be creative, you need to be pretty clear about what creativity means. Even if it means I can't define it, but I know it when I see it, right? But very often organizations just jump in without really knowing where are they starting in terms of creativity and where they want to go to, right? So that's the step one. But here's the interesting thing, right? So John mentioned some things which I put down. He said, think small, it will take 7 years, ignore consumer, seek failure. Yep. So now let's imagine Google is coming up with this really big thing, right? Really big new idea. And you go back to work tomorrow, and you walk into your boss's office. Will you tell him or her, think small, it will take 7 years, ignore the consumer, and seek failure? Why wouldn't you? We just heard a very compelling presentation that is the right thing to do. So why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it? Fear. Oh, there's something about fear. What else? I think it goes to what Mark was saying in the morning about social learning, right? You have learned socially that that's not the right thing to do, right? Because you are going to get fired if you said that, even if it is the right thing to say, right? So there's something about social learning which is really important. So in my work, when I get these behaviors, can you imagine, my job is to then get, if I believe this to be the truth, my job is to think about with people and help organizations transform to do those things. How do you get organizations to transform to do those things? And not just those things. I mean, if you think about it, all of these are social learnings, right? Researchers need to have great analytical skills. You're not a great researcher if you don't have great analytical skills. Very standard socially learned behavior in organizations. Financial services are boring and bloodsuckers, right? Because that is what the social learning has taught us, right? Union workers want to get away with the minimum. I work at a chemical manufacturing plant. I hear that all the time from management. And the union workers say, management want to take away benefits and jobs. Or you might be saying it about people who are in the C-suite in your organization. And finally, I don't like to transform. Right? So you may know all the behaviors. The question happens, how do you transform them? Because it's not as easy as just going and saying, hey, I read a great article, I heard great presentations, and now, boom, tomorrow the organization will change or transform. Right? So that's the conversation we'll have just now. And in order to do that, I want to start with a conversation about transformation. So again, go back to your tables and have a chat about what is a transformation. What does this word transformation mean? What does transformation mean? Because everyone in business today uses this word transformation. It's the coolest new word after creativity, right? Transformation. Creative transformation. Have a chat. What does it mean? Have a chat. Great. Thank you. I'm sure we'll keep having the conversation. So let's start. Who wants to go first about transformations? Like change. So change. Transformation is the same thing as change. Okay, what else? Evolution. Evolution. What else? Growth. Metamorphosis. Ooh, big word. I like that. What else? What else? So let's look at each one of these words, right? So let's start with change. Often organizations confuse transformation and change, right? Because change is replacing one thing with another. That's what change is, right? So you can have one organization structure, tomorrow you have another organization structure, that's change. Question, whether is it a transformation or not? You may completely change the business processes, and Hannah referred to it in skills. Is that a transformation? Is that a change? It's probably a change because you can revert back from those processes, right? So transformation is more than change. Not sure whether it's an evolution or a revolution, but it's something like that, right? It could be a revolution as well as an evolution. It could happen overnight or it could take some time. Growth. That's an interesting word. When you talked about growth, was it positive growth or negative growth or any kind of growth? Right? Because transformation is just energy. And it could be positive or it could be negative. We use it in a positive way, but a cancer is a transformation. Right? The cell transforms. And the only way it can ever revert back is by killing it. Actually, you can never revert back. You have to kill that cell. That's how you eliminate cancer in a body. So a transformation by itself can either be positive or negative. And the final one we come to is metamorphosis, which I absolutely love. So a great example of metamorphosis is a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? And if you think about what is core to that, which really helpful if you think about transformation, there are three things in a caterpillar to a butterfly which really makes it a transformation. The first one is very simply that a caterpillar, the way a caterpillar sees life, right, crawling on a leaf, is completely different from the way a butterfly sees life when it's flying all over the place. So there's a shift in root perspective. You completely see life differently. Right? So if you want to get people to get convinced about thinking small, it will take 7 years, ignore consumers, seek failure, that's a transformation of a perspective. It's a completely different point of view, and that's what's key in a transformation. Shift in root perspective is one. The second one, which I guess is very obvious, is once a butterfly becomes a butterfly, it can never go back to being a caterpillar. Right? So the difference between change and transformation is that from a transformation, you can never go back. And that's what you're trying to create through this conversation today. That's a lot of what we're trying to talk about. And then the last one is if you think about a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, there's something innate in the structure of the caterpillar that makes the caterpillar want to transform to being a butterfly. It's fascinating, right? A caterpillar turns to mush before it becomes a butterfly. And it's not like someone else is beating them up and slapping them around to say, you better transform. It happens because there's something within the structure of the caterpillar that makes it happen. So what is the innate structure of an organization? And Hannah talked about it, it's the people, right? So the third piece is it needs to be fundamentally about the people. But then I ask the next question, which is, are behaviors really innate to human beings? Or is there something else which drives behaviors? Is behaviors innate to human beings or something else that drives behaviors? Environment. What does the environment do? So the environment actually is just extrinsic, right? So here's the fun thing, right? So Mark said this morning, which which is very true about most human beings, right? That we all learn, most of learning happens through social learning, and there's very little individual choice that happens, right? That's because inherent in the social learning are certain mindsets and attitudes that we have. And what is innate to a human being, which drives behavior, is the mindsets and attitudes. And yet, there are people who make individual choices, right? So I used to live in South Africa for a few years. There was a man called Nelson Mandela, great example, was in prison for 27 years. He chose to interact with white South Africa different from any other black South African did. Right? The other black South Africans wanted to retaliate and wanted to get their pound of flesh. Mandela made an individual choice to do something different. All the wonderful examples of the brands that were given, all of those were fascinating because they were all individual choices, because they weren't born out of just the social learning. That guy who was dancing up out in front, right? So it's very fascinating to see how everyone else followed the guy. But the guy who started dancing to begin with, his name was what, Chris? Colin. Tried 7 times. The guy must be crazy, right? But did he make an individual choice, or was he social learning? Bit of both, I guess. But we can get into that conversation. But that is the conversation. And to me, it's not an either or. To me, the art of transformation lies in the and. And for me, 3 steps to transformation which I need to think about if I'm helping a system. I'm helping a system in 3 ways, right? If I'm thinking about transformation, this is a typical curve of a transformation. If this is performance, and this is time. Typically, a transformation starts slowly, and here it is uncool to be the person who jumps in and says, I want to transform and I want to be different. Right? So here I need to think about how do I create individual choices for a critical mass of people to jump in so that I can create start a transformation. Then there's a place where all the social learning skills need to be applied so that I can make the system excited and I can get rapid growth in terms of the transformation. Now here's the problem. This is why I left McKinsey. 70% of supposed so-called transformations tend to go right back in terms of performance to where they started. And quite honestly, the McKinsey model didn't work for me at some level. And it's only 30% that continue to succeed. So the third piece for me is how do I make this happen? So what do you think is the difference between the ones that go back and the ones that continue to succeed? Any thoughts, any reactions? Buy-in. Buy-in. Yeah, so 70%, even though you think you're doing it, you end up beating up people to make them do things. So as long as you keep beating them up, they make the choices you want them to make. Social learning happens, and you do whatever happens. And in marketing, that's good because you get volume growth, but then that dies and the next idea comes in.
I think also incentives.
Incentives. So, but if you're truly transforming, and if you bought in, you will never change back even if the incentives change. Right? That's the interesting thing. But we'll get into this conversation, so stay with me. Let's come back to this. But typically, what is happening here, which is absolutely key, is there's a lot of compliance that goes on in a lot of transformation programs. What I would suggest is in most organizations, in the short run, you can change the culture by beating people up. The problem with beating people up is you're forcing choice on people. Now, adults, unfortunately, don't learn very well when you beat them up, right? Which is the whole point around you cannot force people, you can't do transformation to people, you can't force people to buy things. Because what happens in the short run, people take it on, but after that, they'll go right back to behaving the way they do. And what is key is to understand how do you create both commitment and compliance to transform a culture. And that is at the core of it. Because the commitment is what really shifts people's behaviors. And this is really powerful because that is what you need to do if you want to really transform an organization. So there's more to it than purpose, but absolutely those are elements of it. So let's get into what happens. So there are two parts to transformation. One is you need to change the environment in which the person operates. And the other is you need to change the personal mindsets of the person, of at least a critical mass of people, so that they can make the individual choice, so that, as Malcolm Gladwell says, you get 30%, which is the tipping point. So how do you start changing personal? Let's get into the personal first, because we've talked a lot about the environment. If you really want to transform someone, what you need to understand, first of all, is that human beings are like icebergs. Right? What do we know about icebergs? What do we know about icebergs? They're melting, and we're all sinking. No. Yeah, most of it you don't see, right? You see only about 10%. Now, depending on the salinity of the water, it could be 10.2 or 9.8. Doesn't really matter. But essentially what you see is behavior. And essentially what we end up doing is we start working here, and that does not actually change the personal mindset. If you really want to transform people, what you really need to understand are what are the thoughts and feelings, and this is qualitative research at its best, right? What are the thoughts and feelings driving that behavior? What are the thoughts and feelings driving that behavior? Because if you don't get that, you will not be able to change behavior. And I'll take you through an example of my own just so that you can get this. The next one below that is, what are my values and priorities which drive those thoughts and feelings? And finally, yes, and what are my needs that are either met or unmet that drive all of that, right? Because if you don't get into that, you will not get transformation, because that is at the heart of a person's thought process and what is innate to a human being. So let's take an example. So when I joined McKinsey in 1999, I was the antichrist when it came to innovation, because I was the world's most controlling human being ever. Anyone on my team knew that you don't cross Gaurav, because Gaurav will kill you, right? That was my behavior. Everything I controlled. I literally knew what everyone was doing down to the second. Literally, right? And I got lots of feedback, and people said, hey, you need to change your behavior. So I said, okay, tell me, how do I change my behavior? He said, you need to be nice to them when you tell them all the stuff you tell them. So I was nice to them for a few days, and then I got really irritated, and I went right back to behaving the way I used to behave, right? Then someone said, hey, you know what? Count to 10 before you say it. So I started counting to 10, and then after 10, I would count to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and I still would get worked up. So that didn't work. Then someone said, you know what? Let them go for 3 days. If they're successful, then whatever. I couldn't reach the third day. By the end of the first day, I would go crazy, and I'd say, these guys may be screwing up. My client will not succeed. And if my client doesn't succeed, oh no. Because the thoughts and feelings that were driving this behavior was, I needed to succeed at any cost. And I needed to become partner at McKinsey and make millions of dollars, because my feelings was, if you're not successful in McKinsey, then you're a failure in life. How will you change that? The values and priorities below that were driving it was that I come from India, where life is a struggle. That's what I was taught. Life is a struggle. You don't get out of business school and choose which city you want to stay in. You go wherever you need to go. And your parents tell you from a very early age, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and the only thing that is worth it and the only value that matters is success. So my priority was success, success, success. And my fear was, if people don't listen to me and if I don't control them, then I will be irrelevant. I will be irrelevant. So how do I go about then creating creativity for other people, or even being creative myself, because I want to make sure that everything I do succeeds, right? And my need is success, and my fear is that my parents, because I'm the younger one of the two, my parents gave more importance to my brother when he succeeded. How am I going to transform? So that's the level at which transformation needs to happen. You have to think about who the human being is. You have to help them understand what's going on for them, and then ask the contradictory, better mindset. And this is not a process that happens in a minute. It takes time. But you need the leaders of the organization, as well as some of the key people in the organization, to go through this process for the personal piece to transform. Because if that does not happen, the behaviors will not transform. The behaviors will just change. And change is easy. Change is really easy. You know, every time I got a review, I would change for 3 days. That's pretty easy to do. It's the transformation which is key. Great. So I went through this workshop. There was a very wise man who took me through this for a few days, and I got really jazzed up. And I wanted to change my behavior. But what happened was I went back to McKinsey, and McKinsey partners in New York, aggressive guys, always want to make lots of money. You know, they said, hey, Gaurav, that's all nice, but hey, you need to succeed. So that doesn't work, right? So there's another piece to this, which is then what is the environment supporting enough for you to make you try out the new behaviors or not? So what is it about the environment? So let's have a fun exercise. Let's imagine you all work for the same organization. You all work for the same organization, right? So at your tables, you'll all imagine you work for the same organization. I don't know, the CEO of your organization has gone crazy, and he's decided, or she's decided, that everyone is going to wear orange Speedos and come to work. Orange Speedos, right? And you have been given the responsibility, since you're all such brilliant people, right? And you've been talking about creativity. Creatively, you're going to convince all of them and transform them into wearing orange Speedos and come to work. What are you going to do? How will you make it happen? Have a chat at your tables. Okay. Let's go table by table, and I'll get one idea each, and we'll keep getting ideas till people run out. So what do you guys have as one idea? Anyone? Turn off all the lights. Turn off the lights. Perfect. I love that. And you can't be productive at all. Thank you. How about you guys? Gym and personal training. Gym, personal training. Love it. Okay, we've done that. Now what else?
All of management wears the Speedo also.
All of management wears Speedos. So they need to be that crazy guy who's dancing up front, wears Speedos. Okay, what else? Next group.
In similar territory, pay 5 people to wear it the week before.
Pay people. Pay people, 5 wear it, okay? What else? This group.
Competition or a contest to
A
dress
contest.
your own creative
Okay.
Speedo.
Awesome. How about you guys?
Let them wear it under their clothes.
Oh, that's cheating. That's not allowed. Yeah. And, you know, let's be a realist and sometimes fire a few people who refuse to. Right? Hey, we all do that. Why not? That person just doesn't get it.
For every person that dons a Speedo, money will go to Cancer Research Foundation.
So a donation. Okay, what else?
Hire ex-swimmers.
Ex-swimmers. What you meant was swimsuit models? No. Ex-swimmers. Okay, what else?
Yeah, we had testicular cancer, something slightly more specific.
Okay, I get that. What else?
But
What else?
And then there was the no.
It's okay. This is safe space. You can go for it.
Do my plums look good? Sort of, you know, it might be a good
Okay,
look.
great. I don't know where that goes, but I'll remember that for my next slide. Thank you. What about others? So people, ideas which have not been said till now, just throw them out. Oh, pool. Absolutely. I've heard other clients say, take the heating up to 120 degrees, right? Great idea. What else? What else would you do? Oh, no, that's cheating. Will, that's cheating. Shapewear. What else? Free. Something free, okay. What else? Providing for telecommunications, that's cheating. You can't work from home, but you want everyone to wear orange Speedos. What else? Okay, so here's the question. So you turn off the lights, you pay people, you have a contest, you reward them, you donate, you have a pool, you give them stuff for free, you give gym and personal training, you give shapewear, all of management wears it, 5 people wear it, ex-swimmers. Will that transform? Self-acceptance psychotherapy. Psychotherapy. I don't even know how to spell it. Psychotherapy. Okay, what else? Remove all mirrors. Okay, I'll put it here. No mirrors. Okay, so you guys have missed. This is a record. This is the first time I have not got someone tell me something that goes up here, which is probably the most important one. Right? So the first one is called fostering understanding and conviction. And given that you're all advertisers and market researchers here, communication did not figure in this whole program. I love that. This is brilliant. This is absolutely perfect. So what is fostering understanding and conviction? It's interesting. There are 2 words here, understanding and conviction. Now, as you mentioned, John, that understanding is a very rational process, and often it is a justification for the limbic system making decisions through your amygdala and all that cool stuff. Conviction is an emotional concept. And when most organizations talk about transformation, what they do is they do great presentations and absolutely brilliant PowerPoints to try and help people understand why they should change. And they'll have a business case which will have all kinds of economic logic and all that good stuff. All that does is builds understanding. It does not build any conviction. So there are 3 things to conviction. One is the skill of storytelling. And you guys talked about it. Which is, what is the story for this transformation? Not what is the presentation or what is the business case, but what is the story for this transformation? Because the reason why stories sell, the reason why you guys create advertising is because people remember stories. People don't remember PowerPoint presentations. So building a story around the transformation is absolutely critical. And really, really getting it sorted out is critical. That's number 1. And the story needs to have, why do you care about it, right? As a leader in the organization. Which is the whole purpose question which starts going on. The second thing, which is really interesting, is as follows. There's actually a very fascinating piece of research which has been going on in the world where you bring in 100 people, research. Brilliant, you guys are all researchers. I still haven't forgotten my research days, right? You bring 100 people off the street into a room, right? And you say, hey guys, it's your lucky day. One of you is going to win $10,000. We're going to have a lottery here. So you go into the room. All the researchers go out. They hand out to half the room. They hand out a lottery ticket with a number written on it. To the other half of the room, they hand out a lottery ticket with no number written on it. And they say, you can write any number on this between 1 and 100. Okay? And you tell everyone to write their names at the back of it. And then the researchers go out, collect all the lottery tickets, bring it back, put it in a big bag. And just as the head researcher is about to pull out the lottery ticket, he stops. He says, you know what? Why the hell should one of you win? Let's make it democratic. All of you can name a price at which you would be willing to sell the ticket to me. So they go back out, hand out all the lottery tickets back out, and then they come up to you, Mark, and say, Mark, how much money do you want for your ticket? Mark, being a greedy guy, wants $5,000. No, just joking, right? But the point is you literally can name the price. Guess how much more money do people want if they've written a number on the lottery ticket versus if they were given a lottery ticket with a number already written on it? Knowing fully well, your researchers here, the probability of winning does not change. Whether you write a number or you were given a lottery with a number already written. How much more do people want if they've written a number? 5 times as much. 5 times it. So the second part is, don't just tell a story, get people to participate in creating the story with you. And there's a big process called a cascade of a story, which does exactly that, which is you cascade the story, so not only are people participating in it, but they're actually able to understand what's going on in it at the same time. That builds conviction. And then the third thing, which is absolutely critical, is a simple thing which says, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? So you want me to wear orange Speedos, why the hell should I wear it? I understand why the organization wants me to wear it, but why should I wear it? What's in it for me? And remember, if you understand Maslow's, which I'm sure all of you do, there are 5 reasons why people come to work. There's self, which is I want to make money, I want to take care of my family, I want to learn. There's team. There's customer. There's company. And there's society or community. And it's fascinating, but do this research next time you're doing this, working with a client, and ask them to allocate 100 points across these 5 as to why do they come to work every day. And I promise you, at least 50 of it is self, even for the CEO and his top team. But most of the time, we tell the story at the company and the customer level. So we should transform and become more creative because it'll be good for the company and good for the customer. Why do I care? Why do I care? What is the benefit of doing that for me? It becomes really, really important. And that's how you create conviction. You explain what's in it for me, you make them participate in the cascade, and they'll tell you what's in it for them, and you do storytelling. And by the way, the other thing related to that is organizations and employees have a very high bullshit meter, very strong bullshit meter. So if you bullshit them on the story, they'll know immediately. And the amount of cynicism in organizations today about transformation is so high that if you're not careful, you run into trouble. And therefore, just remember this, I'm sure you guys have seen this somewhere or the other, that there are 3 parts to effective communication. There's words, there's voice, and there's nonverbal communication. 8%, 37%, and I used to be at McKinsey, so I can do math. 55%. 55% is nonverbal, which means that if your story, people don't buy that you really buy into the story, they will know. So you can be really good at telling stories, but if you're not truly bought into it, people will pick it up subconsciously. That's why some advertising works and others doesn't, and honestly, all those cool market research techniques can't tell you. I remember at P&G, used to do really stupid advertising research. It was like crazy. We used to read all the verbal comments and try and figure out something. But it never picked up what the nonverbal piece was in the advertising. So that's that. That's one. The second one, very simply, is role modeling. Now, you guys got one of the 3 in here, which is get the management to wear it. Absolutely. It's very easy for management, and I've seen this again and again, where they tell other people what to do, but they never do it themselves. But there are 2 others which is really interesting. The first one, again, remember, you're trying to very quickly accelerate transformation. You're trying to get to 30% tipping point. There are some wonderful people in an organization called the troublemakers. Absolutely wonderful people. Who are troublemakers? They're not your high performers. They are the ones who everyone goes to for gossip. You know, when a CEO sends out a message, that message, by the time it gets to the front line, the gossip has already exceeded it, and the gossip is what people believe is the real story. So figure out who the troublemakers are in the organization and work with them to try and get them to buy into the transformation. Because that's how you get to tipping point. Think about it. The leadership in an organization, including the CEO by themselves, typically account for about 15%, 10 to 15% of the energy of the organization. The other 10 to 15%, about 10%. The problem is when we try and do transformation, we go get the high performers. The problem is the high performers are high performers based on existing models of behavior. And you're trying to transform those behaviors. So the only way you do it is by getting the troublemakers. And then the last one, which I thought, Mark, you hit it absolutely on the head, is there's something about symbolic actions, right? What are those big things? What are those things which may not have any monetary value, but create the buzz in the organization? What are those symbolic actions which everyone is focused on, which if you do, everyone says, man, this place is different from now on. Doesn't matter whether it has any monetary value. So for example, there was an organization, a banking organization that was trying to get more creative. And what they found out was hierarchy was their biggest problem, which they needed to transform because otherwise they won't be creative. What did they do? They said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to cancel all our reserved parking for all the senior leaders. Because as long as we have that reserved parking, symbolically what we are saying is hierarchy is more important than creativity. And they gave it to people who came up with the most creative ideas during the day or during the month. Symbolic action, not significant monetary value, but huge breakthrough in the clutter. Absolutely critical for this piece to work. And these are the two which often organizations don't really do a good job on. Role modeling and fostering understanding and conviction. This stuff is pretty straightforward. This is systems and processes, right? Are the systems in place to make things happen, right? Is there a pool? Is the heating on? Is there rewards and processes in terms of whether you reward them? But if you don't have this, I want to do it. I see other people doing it. But if the incentive system doesn't change, which was the point made earlier, I'll keep doing what I was doing because there's no point trying to do something different, right? The only idea I would tell you here is, remember, we as human beings do not like to transform. That's not our default option, right? Comfort zone. We all know this, right? That's why Einstein kept saying, you guys, insanity is repeating the same thing again and again, expecting a different result, and yet we are all insane. We keep doing the same things. My wife is brilliant. She says, I don't want to transform because I don't like stepping out of the comfort zone. I know I'm dysfunctional in the comfort zone, but I know what the outcome of my dysfunctionality is going to be. Right? So we do not like to transform. So the comfort zone, predictable, right? You step out, lots of fear of failure. So how do you overcome that? By the way, this fear of failure is embedded from your school. Remember when you get your report cards? When your parents give you a reward for doing well and they punish you when you don't? That's where it starts. So the big idea here is celebrate like crazy. Even the smallest things you can find in an organization to celebrate when you're transforming, do that. Because the more you celebrate, the more people have the courage to try things differently. And the more you beat them up, by the way, I don't know about you guys, but when I used to work at McKinsey, we used to have these red light and red, green, and yellow things. And all the time, everyone focused on the red. And the more we focus on the red, the more people said, man, these McKinsey guys, we hate them. Right? Because the more you do red, the more fear kicks in. Focus much more on the green and celebrate the green like crazy. That's what it is about. And then finally, again, Hannah, you talked about it. This is about skills. This is, I want to do it. I get rewarded for it. But if I don't have the skills to do it, I can't do it. I just can't. Right? So am I, from a mindset perspective as well as a basic skill perspective, can I actually make it happen? Now, great, brilliant. Now, what happens in organizations is that, because of the comfort zone, what happens is that we do a few of these things pretty well, then others we don't do as well. But, it's like this. When you're in a ball game, when you go and watch the New York Mets, because I hate the Yankees, right? When the Mets hit a home run, you make a lot of noise. Now, I go to the Opera House, and I promise I have only been there once. I'm sure you guys have gone there much more. But when you go to the Opera House, at the high points of the opera, you keep absolutely quiet, right? Now, same human being, make a lot of noise, keep absolutely quiet. What happens is when we do two of these things, half of it looks like the Opera House, half of it looks like the ball game. And because I don't want to change, I go looking for the ball game. And I keep making the noise I want to make. So don't try to change many things, but if you're transforming things, do all four of them together, along with the personal piece. Along with the personal piece. Because if you don't do that, then you are not setting up the right framework for a transformation to happen. It's the end, and it takes time. It doesn't take 7 years, fortunately. At least my research suggests it doesn't, but hey, we can talk about it. It's typically 18 to 24 months. If you just did that, it takes 7 years. GE did that. GE's transformation was all this. If you add this, it takes 18 to 24 months. This is the tough part. This is not easy to do. Right? Now, the only other thing I'd like to talk about is what is your role? What is the time, though? Just want to make sure. Yeah, we have 7 minutes. What is your role as leaders? Right? What is your role as leaders? Because you're actually going to try and transform people who are already really good at what they do. Right? You're all part of successful organizations, which means that the people in the organization are really smart people. And what happens is that they're all what is called unconsciously skilled. Unconsciously skilled, which is they don't even need to think about what they do, and they can just do it. Right? Best practice is another word which is used in organizations all the time. We're all best practice. Now, if everyone is unconsciously skilled, how do you get them to transform? How do you get them to get into a mode of creativity? And by the way, my definition of creativity is a unique interpretation of a collective experience. We all can have unique interpretations of the same collective experience. The problem is we don't choose to because we are scared. Because we are fearful that if we choose to interpret things differently and uniquely, then the system is going to beat us up. And that's why we all get into behaviors which are social learning, which is you're unconsciously skilled about a certain behavior. So the first step of learning, which takes you to what is called unconsciously unskilled, which is I don't know what I don't know, is this wonderful thing called humility. And the opposite of it is hubris. So anyone read the book Good to Great? Jim Collins, nice red book, great book. You must read it. There he predicted these organizations were going to be successful for time immemorial, right? He recently wrote another book. It's a black-colored book called How the Mighty Fall, because he had to now explain why is these organizations have failed, right? And the first step, he said, to failure, lack of humility or hubris. So you as leaders need to figure out how you're going to create humility in your organizations for people to be willing to be constantly learning. And then the rest of it is fun. The rest of it is fun. But this order doesn't work, so I'll put this in here. So the next step is how do you take people from unconsciously unskilled to consciously unskilled? The reason why social learning works so brilliantly is because what it does is it creates relevant events. It doesn't just create any events. Someone was talking about training in organizations. 8% of all training in organizations ever leads to anything. So you should stop all training programs in organizations. The reason for that is because they're not relevant. Because that's relevance is the role of a leader. Create a relevant event. Not any kind of event. Just because you think it's relevant, do it, but because other people find it relevant. Because that's what creates awareness. The next step is moving from consciously skilled, which is all about choice. And choice is essentially this, which basically what it does is it says you can't force people to choice. You create the right conditions for people to make choices you want them to make. And by the way, if they don't make those choices, it is totally okay. Here's the most wonderful thing about success. If you get attached to success, you will fail. So detachment from the outcome and just doing it because you believe it's the right thing to do is critical for creating the right conditions. And finally, you get back to unconsciously skilled, but you only do that if you have. This is why, John, you talked about 7 years and courage. And often, courage is missing in organizations. That's why you need leaders like John to start an organization which breaks the rules of market research. Right? So the leader becomes absolutely key because the leader has to do all of this, and the leader has to create the conditions for all of this. And you can't do it, which is, Brent, what you were saying, if you have an expert mindset. Because learners see possibilities and therefore creativity, experts don't see possibilities. And if you're already an expert, then no one else is going to try and behave any other way because the way you succeed in your organization is by being an expert. And the other thing is, think whether you have a victim approach to life or a mastery approach to life. Because a victim approach to life is social learning, which is everyone else does something, so I will do it. The mastery approach to life is, doesn't matter what the situation is. I'm going to do what is right to do because it is the right thing to do. And it is always a more difficult way to live life. And those are the conditions for a leader to live if you really want to transform an organization. It is to step out on the ledge and say, I am willing to take a risk before anyone else does.